One of the most frequent questions I get in my programs and classes that I teach is, how do I know when it's my intuition or my ego? Is that you? You're questioning whether what you're getting is your intuition or your ego, and because you're questioning, you just feel like you don't know what to do. Hi, I'm Deepa Liu. I'm the Creative Mystic, and I was guided to share with you in my sadhana what is the voice of the ego and what is the voice of the intuition, so that you can recognize when you're receiving that higher guidance and you start to actually act on it. Because the higher guidance, your intuition, is always trying to lead you to more growth. More growth, whether it be spiritually, spiritual growth, more growth if you have your own business, to grow your business, more growth to maybe grow emotionally, mentally, but more growth, more expansion, because as a spiritual soul, a spiritual being, you're meant to be growing continuously until you're out of a body. And so you want to learn how to recognize when it's that intuition and how to follow it. Because if you're getting guidance and you're not acting on it, there's a part of you that's questioning whether it's actual guidance. So let's get going. So let's start with your ego. That way you can recognize when you're in it and move yourself out of it so that you can start to get that higher guidance. Now, if you're in your ego is in your subconscious mind. You have three minds: the subconscious, conscious, and superconscious mind. We're only going to talk about the subconscious mind today because we're talking about your ego. Okay, so your ego resides in your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind wants three things: safety, security, sameness. Those three things. So you can start to recognize when it's the voice of your ego, when it's trying to keep everything the same. Now, when I say the same, it doesn't mean you're going to do the exact same thing every single day. You might, but you also might seem like you're doing different things when in actuality you're not getting anywhere. Have you ever been there where you feel like you're spinning your wheels, you're working, or doing things, but you're not making any progress? That's because your subconscious mind, your ego, is making the decisions, okay? Because it wants safety, security, sameness. So sameness would look like this might happen. You might catch yourself saying, like when you get some guidance, oh, that's not logical, that's not practical, oh, that I wouldn't be being responsible if I did that. See, that's the ego trap that tries to keep you caught and keeping everything the same. But it tries to use your intellect to stop you. See, your intellect is really meant to help you move forward and apply the spiritual laws. But unfortunately, if you're not really conscious about it, your ego uses the intellect to keep you stuck, to keep things the same, to keep you at the same place. And that might be the sameness. It might be you're doing different things, but never getting beyond a certain level, because your ego wants to keep you at that sameness, that same level, okay? So if you start to hear yourself saying, that's not logical, that's not responsible, that's, any of that, that's not practical, logical, practical, responsible, that is the voice of your ego trying to have you operate on the beliefs that you received when you were young. And so as you start to grow spiritually, you have to question those beliefs and go, do I really truly believe that? Or is that just a belief that was given to me by my parents? And so that's one way to recognize if you're in your ego, okay, is if that voice comes up. Now you might be saying, well, that's not the guidance I got, but I want you to recognize when it's the ego, because that's the biggest block or stopper of you acting on your higher guidance, of you believing in your higher guidance when you're getting it. So when you see that voice come up, go, I'm in my ego. It's time to move out of it. We're going to talk about that later, how you move out of it. But right now we're going to talk about just recognizing it. So if you're doing the same old thing, just doing stuff to stay safe and secure, those are the three things that are your ego. So if all your choices are made from just, I want to do because this makes me feel safe, it's your ego. If you're doing something because it makes you feel secure, like there are people who are in jobs that hate their job. In fact, I knew people, friends that were like that. They hated their job. They hated going to it every day. And what did they do? They kept going to it because of what? The money, right? And what keeps people there even more is if that job offers a pension, which not many do anymore, or have like big stock options where they're getting money. People will stay in jobs that they don't like because they think that they can never get it someplace else, which is so far from the truth, okay? Because your higher guidance wants to bring you that abundance, that success, and be happy. You don't have to be miserable to be successful and wealthy. You can have both, okay? So your ego will try to keep you in that same job because of safety and security as the reason. And that, will never get you what you truly desire, which if you're watching this, you want what? Spiritual growth. You probably want success too in your life. You probably want to be happy, okay? Or feeling joyful and happy. Some of the joy and love and peace of what shows with a lot of spiritual growth is that you start to have more of those feelings. Okay, so you want to recognize that those are the voices of your ego. So if the guidance that you're getting, what you're getting coming to you, is something that's don't do anything, don't go anywhere, don't do something different, that is a message from your ego, not intuition. Because intuition, higher guidance, is always going to be having you expand and grow. Now, that's not to say you're never going to get a don't do something if it's not right for you. But if you're constantly getting those messages of don't move forward, don't do this, don't make a change, don't take a risk, and that's the big one, okay, of your ego, the voice of your ego, don't take a risk. Okay, what's risky to one isn't risky to another. And risk is only because it's unknown. So anything that's not known is risky. And your ego wants to know. Safety, security, sameness. That's why they like keeping everything the same, because the ego knows, this is what I expect. And it doesn't want the unexpected, the unknown. So if it's doing something where it's telling you to just stay with what you know, and that's the only message you're getting, that's your ego. It's not your intuition. Okay? So you want to start to recognize when is that voice coming up that's trying to keep you in the same place, even if you're doing something slightly different, because you're not really growing to that next level. Okay? So those are some of the things of your voice of your ego. There are more, but that'll keep you busy just recognizing those. All right, so now let's get to the voice of your intuition. Your intuition. Now, number one, your intuition will never guide you to harm yourself, another person, an animal. That is not your intuition, okay? That's your ego thinking that you need to do this to be safe and secure and get your own or get what you need. And so know that anything that you're being guided to harm another person, and I'm not saying you get this, I never get it, but I know some people do because we see some things in the world. So, but that's number one. That's the obvious. It never guides you to harm yourself, harm another person, harm another being, animal, anything, okay? Your intuition also when you get guidance, when you get that download, and you might be questioning it in the moment that you get it. Do that split second, if you're really present, it comes in and it feels right. Like there's something about it that you just know that this is truth. Now, the challenge that happens is that comes in that feeling, that moment that you can recognize it. This is guidance. So I want to give you an example. And sometimes it's not you're meditating when you get this guidance, okay? It can be that often intuition, higher guidance comes through another person, or happens when you're on the internet. It happened to me, a few months ago. Quite a few months ago, I had been wanting to do checking out force therapy training. And, I had looked at some things and nothing was like clicking, but I kind of let it go and put it aside for a while. And then a few months ago, I, for whatever reason, felt this like desire to go look it up at the internet again for force therapy training. And I did a little search and up popped this force therapy training that, boom, was right in my backyard. And in that moment when I saw it, I got the feeling of like, I'm supposed to do this. I can feel it. And so I could tell. Now, what happens often after you get that feeling of, I'm supposed to do this, is that ego mind comes in, the practical, responsible, safe, secure, wants you to, do the sameness, safe, secure. And the big one that stops most people is money. How am I going to pay for it? Oh, I can't do that. That's too much money. Okay, that's your ego. Now, your higher guidance isn't trying to get you in debt. I don't want you to think that. But your higher guidance is wanting you to go, this is my truth. I'm to act on this. I might not know the how yet, but it feels right. Okay? But the challenge that happens is in that moment when you get the guidance, get the download, it feels right. But in the next second, your ego mind kicks in and you're like, I can't do that, because of XYZ. It could be, my spouse won't like that. Oh, I can't do that because of my children. Money. Oh, that's way too much money. I couldn't spend that on myself. That's a big one for women. I see women spending all kinds of money on their children, which there's nothing wrong with that. But then when it comes to themselves, they're cheap. Is that you? I hope not. But some women are like that. They spend everything and anything on their kids or their husband, or your spouse may not be husband, like I have a wife, your wife, but your significant other. And when it comes to you, you have a challenge. So that voice, if you have that habit, and that's the thing is your belief system, when you get in the next moment after you get the guidance, will rear its head and tell you that that's not guidance. Oh, that's you being selfish. That's you. And all of a sudden you see yourself off on that road questioning, is that my intuition? So your intuition, it feels right in the second that you feel it. But it's brief. It's like flashes by. And, my wife used to ask me sometimes in the past, because my intuition it would be a flash. And it would have to happen sometimes 3 or 4 times before I would recognize that, I'm getting this guidance that I haven't been acting on because it's been flashing so quick that I couldn't recognize that it was guidance. And it would take 3 or 4 times for it to come in. So one of the things I want you to do as you're practicing to recognize when it's your intuition is to look for repetitive signs. See, if you keep having multiple people tell you some kind of similar message that feels right when it's said, okay? I don't take 3 or 4 times anymore. Usually just the second time. And I recognize it on the first time, but we're human, and what happens, life starts happening, and pretty soon you realize you haven't acted on it. Ever happened to you? Yes. So, and when it happens that second time, I'm like, gotta make sure I do this. I'm getting another download from Divine Mother telling me to act on this, okay? So far, those are the 2 things. Recognize never going to harm you, your intuitive guidance, your higher guidance, and it has, in that moment, that second, it feels right. Now, when I say feels right, I don't mean like right and wrong. I mean like there's this sense of, yes, or maybe you feel more peaceful and yes, or joyful and like yes, like you can just, like it feels that way. So it's not like this is right and that is wrong, but it like in your energy, you can sense that you are to do this. And trust me, like I said, it's a flash. So the third thing I'm going to share with you about recognizing the voice of your intuition is that your intuition, your higher guidance, is always leading you to expansion. You're either expanding or contracting. There is no standing still. The ego wants you to contract. The intuition wants you to expand, to grow, okay? And so when you look at what you're being guided to do, does that give you a sense of expansion, of growth, of like going to that next step, that next level? Or is that a contractive, feeling where it feels like sameness, safety, security, where you're not actually growing? Because the factor here is in intuition is that spirit, higher power, God, whatever you call your higher power, is always supporting you in your growth, in expanding. So if you're not having the level of money you desire, or you feel bored in your life, or maybe just you're not quite happy in your relationship, it's about what do you need to do differently? What's the guidance you're going to receive so that you can expand into what you truly desire in your heart. Now, it's all about heart's desires. So intuition is always about bringing you more, one step closer, more to your heart's desire. Now, I don't mean more as in more and more things in your life or in your home. It might be some more things in your life and your home because you may not have the things you need, okay? But it's not about excessive things just to have things. It's about stepping into that next level of growth. And it's always about growth. Again, like I said, it could be in your business. It could be spiritually growing, where you understand spiritual concepts better and deeper and able to apply them in a more effective way, because that's what all spiritual truth is about, is how do you apply what you're learning so that you can have a life that you love. So the concepts of spirituality with the idea of, loving your neighbor. How do you do that? And it starts with how do you love yourself more? So because then loving your neighbor becomes natural. So that's just one concept I'm saying. So it might be guidance you're getting of that's going to help you with that. And it could be practical guidance helping you with how do you start to have more success in your life, because that may be what you're needing. So now that you know what the ego is, how it looks, what the intuition, how it looks, what's the next step? The next step is to practice. I mentioned that earlier, practice. But how do you practice, right? You have to start to, practice raising your level of awareness. And one of the ways you raise your level of awareness, it's why most spiritual practices talk about meditation, is meditation raises your level of awareness so that you can notice that aha. Now, if you're a meditator, great, keep meditating. Start to become aware of what you're feeling in your body, in your mind, in your senses. Just what do you sense in that sixth sense, okay? But the other thing, if you're not a meditator, doesn't mean that you have to meditate every day, like I do. But you can have quiet time every day where you shut off your devices, you shut down the TV, you take some time by yourself so that maybe you reflect on the day to be able to go, I had that feeling when I was in the coffee shop, or when I was here watching this show, or when I was doing whatever it is you're doing, so you can recognize that you had that little intuitive flash. See, so you want to, if you can, meditate, if not, quiet time, but practice noticing when you have those little inklings. Notice when you feel fearful, because fearful is the ego. Notice when you're making choices from that place of contraction, of keeping everything the same, because that lets you become aware of when you're in your ego and when you're in your intuition, because that's the most important thing to start to recognize is, I'm in the voice of intuition. No, I'm in the voice of ego. And then you can start to recognize, I'm in the voice of intuition. This is an intuitive download, not my ego. All right, love to hear your comments, shares about when you start to practice, what happens, how this was helpful for you. And like I said, if you haven't meditated and you're looking for to learn, please put it in there. I'd love to hear. If I get enough comments, like I said, I'll go and create some kind of video. All right? And if you like what you heard here, please subscribe, give me a thumbs up, a like. It all helps my channel. And if you know of someone who can benefit from this, please share it with them. Have a miraculous day. Blessings.